All right, so good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Mosaic. And when we set out 24, 25 weeks ago, or at least teaching weeks, this is lesson 25, we started at Genesis 1:1. We've now worked our way up to Genesis chapter 12. So this is a very good transition point for us to start the new series here that we're doing with all the different classes, doing like a 12-week program. 12 begins really the life of Abram. I'll struggle with that. He's Abram right now. He's not Abraham yet. So we're going to actually start a little bit in chapter 11 because it kind of gives us a little bit of a running start into chapter 12. And we've generally kind of read through the text first. We're going to do that a little differently this time. We're just going to kind of work our way through it, kind of unpack it a bit, and then at the end, I'll probably have one of you just read the section that we've made our way through. So a little different. Speaking of different, I was thinking about this last night a little bit. So just kind of some push pause on the lesson and being Chris here for a minute. I'm in sales, and in sales, one of the things you're taught is that confidence is actually what sells. It's not being flamboyant, it's not being all these things, it's just a sense of confidence. Now that doesn't mean cocky or arrogant, it just means you're not nervous. Because if you're nervous, they pick up on that nervousness, they don't know what's going on. Maybe you're nervous because you're trying to pull a fast one, you know what I mean? So when you're brand new, you have to kind of fake confidence. You understand what I'm saying? And so we teach new people, well, if you're not confident, just pretend like you are. You just fake it, right? So yesterday, Brenda and I are having a conversation that the way I've been doing the job I do is shifting. And it's shifting in a way that's going to be really challenging, I think. It's kind of a totally different way of kind of approaching the market. I was telling her I feel like I have a new job and I'm going to have to start faking confidence. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what is in my mind. And then as I was thinking about Genesis 12 and on, I'm not faking it with you, but I am going to be a little bit more like behind the scenes here. We generally do Ephesians or, things like that. They're very doctrinal, and we're going to look at 6 verses in a week or maybe half a verse, and, this is just narrative story. I don't actually remember teaching a narrative story before. So I'm thinking, how do you do that? I don't really know. I've never really done that in 20 years of doing this. So bear with me. I'm not faking it, but I feel like there's a little bit of I'm kind of figuring this out as we go. It'll be good. Don't think that, oh shoot, he doesn't know what he's doing. But it is a little bit unnerving to come at something that you've never really tackled before. At least that's the way it feels to me. I'll put it to you that way. When you go through the book of Acts, that's very story oriented, but I've never really taught through the book of Acts. I've tended to study more like the writings of Paul's, which tend to be more doctrinal. We've done the first part of Genesis, but that's not really narrative story either. It's just telling you what happened. This, for example, is a good introduction. Unpause. We've done 11 chapters, which covered about 2,000 years, maybe 2,400 years of history. The next 9 chapters or so are going to cover 100, maybe. I mean, we really slow down. And what do you know about Adam? What do you know about him? What do you know about Noah? Well, very little actually, right? What do you know about Abraham? A lot. This is the first time we've come to a character where we actually develop the character. We actually know about him. He's like a real person as opposed to like a stick figure. You know what I mean? It's like Adam. He just it's almost like a label or something. It's not really a person because we just don't know him well. Abraham, we're going to get to know him. So that's kind of what I mean when I say this is more of a narrative story. There's just lots of, I'm thinking on some of these, I'm trying to break it up into chunks for us. Some of these are like 2 chapters. I'm like, man, that's a lot of reading for a morning. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It's just different, but I think it'll be really good. So let's look at this. This is chapter 11. And we're not going to go back through this again because we saw it. But this is the from Shem all the way to Abraham and the genealogy. And we were able to kind of go through and add those up, the ages at which they had their sons. And so we know we're about 290 years, 292 years, something like that, out from the flood to where Abraham is born. Again, Abraham and Noah's life overlap by, I think it was 60 years-ish, 58 years, something like that. So there's some overlap there. So this is the end. We have not really looked at this section of chapter 11 yet, so we're going to work our way through it fairly quickly first. I'll have one of you read this. It's chapter 11, 27 through 32.
Now these are the generations of Terah. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran fathered Lot. Haran died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred, in Ur of the Chaldeans. And Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife, Milcah, the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. Now Sarai was barren, she had no child. Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldeans to go into the land of Canaan. But when they came to Haran, they settled there. The days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran.
Okay, and so then that ends chapter 11, and we're going to work our way through that. It just dawned on me, I don't think I actually said one last thing I wanted to say about my pause that I mentioned. Why am I telling you that this narrative thing seems awkward a little bit to me? It is that, I don't know how to say this without sounding, I love you people. I don't want to be fake with you. I try my hardest to just be as vulnerable as I can. And so that's what's going on in here. And that's just kind of me being vulnerable, I guess is the best word I could put to that. So that's the reason I felt like I wanted to say that. To whatever degree I am faking it, I'm telling you up front. All right, here we go. Terah fathered Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So the first question I've got on there, and the reason we're looking at this question is when we went through the other genealogy, we discovered that there's a lot of people not mentioned in those genealogies, but key people are mentioned, people that matter later to the story. So all of a sudden, we're not just told Abram, we're told all those descendants, right? He begat so-and-so, begat so-and-so, right? Then we get to Abram and we get his brothers listed. So my question would be, why are we told about Abram's brothers and who they married and their descendants? Because that's where we go next, is who's their descendants and who do they married to and all that. It seems ancillary based on the other genealogies a little bit. It's not, and that's what I wanted to highlight for us. So Haran, Abraham's brother, fathered Lot, and then we'll skip over that middle section there. Nahor, his other brother, his wife was Milcah, which is the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah and Iscah. So that's a little confusing, right? What it's saying there is Haran is the father of Milcah and Iscah, if you read it backwards. Okay, so Nahor is married to Milcah, like comma, the daughter of Haran. And who is he? He's the father of Milcah and Iscah, and he's also the brother of Nahor, and he's the brother of Abram. So what this is communicating to us is that Nahor married his niece, is what you're seeing there. But it's kind of odd, this the way that it's worded. So why does that matter? So let's look at this. We're at chapter 12. We're going to double that into the book at 24. So pop back up so it's relevant later in the story. That's why we see it. The Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and from the land of my kindred, and who spoke to me and swore to me, to your offspring. Oh, sorry, I put that in the wrong spot. Sorry, I'm not sure why that's there. Yeah, I'm not sure why that's there. No, it isn't. Sorry. All right. To your offspring I will give this land. He will send his angel before you, and you shall take a wife from my son from there. So this is Abraham, and he's talking, at this point he is Abraham, and he's telling his servant to go do this. This sounds very similar to a verse I added very late in my preparation. I thought I was reading the wrong one, but it's not. So that is the setup for this servant that goes back to the land where he came from, Abraham came from. So he sends him with that as his mission. And now let's read how that works itself out. And he said, the he there is Abraham's servant, the one that's been sent on the journey to get the wife for his son Isaac. And he prays this, O Lord God of my master Abraham, please grant me success today and show steadfast love to my master Abraham. Behold, I am standing by the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Let the young woman to whom I shall say, please let down your jar that I may drink, and who shall say, drink, and I will water your camels. So in other words, he's asking for a drink, and she volunteers to not only give him a drink, but to also water his camels. So that's a little more than just saying, sure, here's a drink. That's what he's asking. Whoever does that, let her be the one whom you have appointed for your servant Isaac. By this I shall know that you have sworn steadfast love to my master. So it's a test. There's all these women, how do I know who? So I'm going to ask several of them for a drink, and whoever offers to water the camels, that's the one, okay? Before he had finished speaking, behold, Rebekah, who was born of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother, came out with her water jar on her shoulder. So all this time later, I mean, this is probably 30 years or so later, maybe 40 years later, he sends the servant back, and he finds this young lady who's the descendant of. So all of a sudden you're like, oh, so that's why we got told all the way back there who these people are marrying, because they're part of the genealogy that's going to be really relevant later. Again, this whole thing is Israel's story. They're telling Israel's story here. And so any key player gets mentioned, and the people that aren't that important don't get much of a mention. So that's what made me think, I wonder why we're being told that. And I went and found, and sure enough, that's why we're told that. So that's one of those things you can pick up in the genealogies. When you find names mentioned that are kind of outside the pattern, they're there for a reason. The answer would be because later they will be important to telling the story of the nation of Israel. So that's why we're told who his brothers are. All right, so now let's look at the section we skipped over. Haran, this is his brother, died in the presence of his father Terah in the land of his kindred in Ur of the Chaldeans. So this is before they've ever left Ur. His brother dies. So I got a map here. I'm going to show you this. I've got a couple different maps, but we'll use this one for now. Do you see the green circle there? I'm going to flash it for you. So that's Ur. That's where it's at. And that's where his Haran died. So I'll show you that again here in a little bit. Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai. I think it's Sarai. Then it becomes Sarah. So Sarai. Now Sarai was barren. I'm skipping over the section we've already looked at, if you notice it jumped. Now Sarai was barren. She had no children. Again, I think in maybe modern culture, it doesn't stand out as much as it did in that culture, right? I think today there's a natural pressure, part of the culture for women to be attractive, right? In this culture, that may have been that pressure, but there was an enormous pressure on having children. We think of Lot and his daughters, get him drunk and sleep with him so that they won't be barren. I mean, that's how important this was to the people of that culture. Totally wrong, shouldn't have ever happened. I'm just using it as an example of how significant that is. And that's why we're told that here. It's also part of the miracle that becomes Isaac and the nation of Israel. Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran. So this would be Abram's nephew. So this is the son of Haran, his grandson, which is Terah's grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, or also known as his son Abram's wife. So that's who he leaves with. And what they do is they went forth together from Ur of the Chaldees to go to the land of Canaan. So, let me go back to our map. So there's Ur, and there's Canaan, okay? You see that? So it's straight across, but what we're gonna find is that's not what they do. What they do is, but when they came to Haran, they settled there. So where is Haran? It's way up here. Now, you may say, well, why in the world, why would they go clear up there? And there's a reason. If you notice straight down from there, what is it? Arabian Desert, all right? Okay, here's the other thing. There aren't gas stations back then, right? So what are you doing? You're following water supply. What are they doing? They're following the Euphrates River. This will pop up later. Mesopotamia, you see that maybe here on the map, Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia means land between the rivers. So there's Euphrates and the Tigris. They're kind of, so Tigris is over here and Euphrates is here. So all this land between there is known as Mesopotamia. So Ur would be right near, because it's all the way down here, but it's actually not between the rivers. It's right on the bank of the river. But it would still be like considered kind of part of Mesopotamia. So they're following the river, they get to Haran, they go around the desert, and then you would come down another set of rivers down into Canaan. That would have been the typical migration route. But what happens is they get halfway and just stop. They settle halfway there. And then it says this, the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. That ends chapter 11, and then we move into chapter 12. Now this is interesting, I think. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and from your kindred and from your father's house to the land I will show you. Famous, right? Famous passage. This is the call on Abraham to go to a land that I will show you. So question is, where was Abraham when God called him? Haran, right? I mean, obviously, just reading the text, that's what it is. The question would be, did that happen in Ur or did that happen in Haran? And by reading Genesis 11 and 12, it becomes fairly apparent that it's in Haran. Except for the fact that we have this. This is in Acts 7. This is Stephen. Stephen said, brothers and fathers, hear me. The God of glory appeared to our father Abraham when he was in Mesopotamia before he lived in Haran. Now, we didn't know that from the writing of Genesis all the way to the writing of Acts. Now, that may have been an oral tradition or something that they may have known, but I don't think, the Holy Spirit inspired Stephen and Luke to write down that in error. I think that's true. I'm not saying there's a contradiction with Genesis. I'm saying this is more information than we had before. This is great. What we do is use the Bible to help interpret the Bible, right? So according to Acts, this happened before he lived in Haran.
Well, if you read in chapter 11, said
Yeah.
they were going to go.
And he was
to the
going
land-
to
land of
Canaan. Canaan, yeah.
So they were going to Canaan, but it was Abram's father that said,
Abraham's father was doing it, yeah, not
let's
Abram.
do it.
So Terah says, hey, I'm going to take my family, we're going to leave Ur, we're going to go to Canaan. They get halfway there and stop and settle there. I don't know where they're coming up with this, but several commentators I've noticed said somewhere probably in the 4 to 5 year range they think they were there. I don't know how they've come up with that. It's based on other references that they weren't giving, but there's a time frame that they're coming up with that for. I'm not giving you that as fact. I'm saying that's what I keep seeing. So I'm going to estimate it something about that. So why are we told that God told Abraham to go and do that? So let's look at this. Well, that's the one you just referenced. I had that in my notes. So if we go back to the chapter in Acts, he said to him, go out from your land and from your kindred and go to the land I will show you, right? That's chapter 12. He's quoting chapter 12 of Genesis. Then he went out from the land of the Chaldeans and lived in Haran. So it's twice. This is before he gets to Haran is when he's called out. And after his father died, God removed him from there into the land to which you are now living, meaning into Canaan, because he's speaking in Canaan when he says this, all those years later. So let's go back to our chapter 12. This is where you see Abraham moving out. If I started him, So up at the top, go to the land I will show you. And then we jump to verse 4. So Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. So, what do we draw from that? Well, here's what we draw, I think. I think he was in Ur of the Chaldeans. I think that's where he was at when he was originally called. But God also moved him out of Haran. We're specifically told that. So I think there's more than one instance of this kind of press on him to do that. How did he move him? I don't know if he came to him again, or we're not told that. It's not a big deal, but it is something to notice how that we're given some information and then we're given more information. One of the things I think we can draw though from that is how often do we feel moved to do something and we start going down that path and then we're kind of stuck partway through our process. Are you stuck in Haran, somewhere? Now it could be that they were planning to do the whole trip and then his father got ill and they couldn't travel and he stayed there until his father passed and then moved on. We're not really sure. We're not given those details.
But maybe he was getting settled in
Haran? Yeah.
Haran.
And then
just,
God had
to say, listen,
yeah.
the plan.
Keep moving.
You've got to
Here's
move.
what I want us to pick up on. We think of Abraham as this incredible man of faith. He leaves Ur of the Chaldees, leaves everything behind, and heads off into the land unknown. Just a total act of faith. Except for that's really sort of what happened, but actually he was with his dad. Then they went and settled in somewhere, kind of halfway in the middle, stayed there for several years. God had to move him along again. He's not this ginormous guy of faith that is unattainable. He's more like you and I than what you might initially think. Still an amazing man of faith. He was willing to offer his son Isaac. We'll see that develop later. I got somebody back here. Go ahead.
Was the city named after his brother?
Oh, I don't think so. No, because his brother had died clear back in Ur of the Chaldees, so I think it's just happens to be named after him, or happens to be the same name. There's another one of those where it was confusing to me earlier. It was somebody named the same as somebody else, and it was confusing. I don't remember where that one's at. So I'm going to switch maps on us. This was the map I was using. Now I'm going to use this one. I just think it works better. So these are these three cities that are in play here. You've got Canaan. He ends up at Hebron eventually, so that's kind of in Canaan. There's Haran there at the top and Ur over here. And this one, I think it's easier to see why. This enormous desert. They can't just go straight across. You'd die, you know. So they are following rivers. They're following water. Again, they're leaving most likely with livestock and lots of people. There's not 4 of them traveling together. This would have been a whole band of people, along with livestock and things of that nature. So there's why they go up and around. Okay, so this is where we were at. Now the Lord God said to Abram, go from your country and from your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you. So I wanted to talk about this for a minute. Why? Why does God decide to bless Abram? We're not ever really explicitly told that about Abram specifically. I think it would be a bad argument to say it's because he was a good guy. He's about to offer his wife as his sister, and Pharaoh takes her. He doesn't step in. That's, you know, I don't want to have dinner with the guy, let alone, you know what I mean? That's just a dirtbag, in my opinion, that you might do that. So it's not that he's better than everybody else, and therefore God brings him in. He says, I'm gonna bless you. So here's his comment. This, I think, is somewhat of a telling. God says to him, I want to take you to this land that I will show you, and I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you may be a blessing. So he's doing this so that he will be a blessing. But why? Why Abraham? This isn't specifically about Abraham, but it is how God works. This is in Exodus 33. Moses says, please show me your glory. And he said, I will make all my goodness pass before you and will proclaim before you my name, the Lord. And I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and will show mercy to whom I will show mercy. So why? Why does he bless Abraham? Because he wanted to. There's nothing meritorious about Abraham, is the point. Now, because of God's faithfulness to Abraham, does Abraham become this incredible man of faith who's willing to offer his son? Yes. After he sleeps with his concubine because he doesn't trust God, and after he offers his wife to Pharaoh. I mean, you know what I'm saying? He's got a lot of stumbling to get through before he gets to offering his son. And so he's not this incredible righteous man that God singles out and, well, I need to grab this guy before he gets away. No. He chose Abraham and said, let's go. I'm going to make a nation out of you. And he does, because that's what his plan is. Go ahead.
But don't you think that even from the beginning, Abraham had faith?
Yes. Yeah. I don't think he was a horrible person. I think he was a normal person in many ways. Yeah. That was probably in the way that he knew, maybe seeking God in some ways.
Yeah. Because I was just thinking, God knows our hearts even before we become one of his children. Because, you know, he chose Noah because he knew that Noah was not living the way the rest of the people.
Yes,
there.
but there's also this issue of that everyone is wicked. Everyone is a sinner.
Right.
And to the degree that we are not, it's to the degree that we have surrendered to the Holy Spirit, right? So before you're called, like think Paul, I love Paul as the illustration, right?
Yeah.
Why does he pick Paul? It's not because he's a good guy. I mean, he is, sort of. I mean, he's very diligent on the law and all the way up to killing people who disagree, you know. So he's not going in and picking these really good, righteous people. And here's why that matters. I don't know if that helps you, but it helps me because I'm not that really good, righteous person in my generation that God can say, okay, well, this is a good one, let's grab. No, he can use Abraham. He can use Paul. He can use you. He can use me. It doesn't exclude us out. You have to be a super saint to get used by God. No, you can be the kind of person that does these taking Bathsheba, you know. You can be that kind of person. Now, does that mean it's okay for us to behave badly? No, obviously not. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying there. But it's because he chose Abraham. The other thing you see in the nation of Israel over and over and over and over again is that he breaks what's normal pattern. He doesn't take the eldest son. He takes, Jacob and not Esau. He just all these different things. And it's all about, this is all on me. I'm making the decisions here. We're not going to do this by pattern. You're the oldest, so you get, no. I'm going to have it be skip the oldest, go to the next one. David, King David, he was the one that nobody wanted, right? They didn't even remember that it bring him out to have him looked at by the prophet. So that's a pattern all through, and I think we can see that here as well. All right, we're going to look at this probably more in weeks to come, but this is a quick reference to this now. I will bless those who bless you, and I will dishonor, and who dishonors you I will curse. This is restated by the prophet Balaam later, and he says of Israel, of whom the Lord has said, I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. That's kind of the way we normally see that quoted. That quote's from Balaam, but this is where this originates from. It says here, those who dishonor you, I will curse. That's much more powerful than those that curse you, I will curse. I'm not cursing Israel, but am I dishonoring Israel? There's a difference there, right? So, this is the question. I will bless those who bless you, and I will dishonor, and who dishonors you, I will curse. I keep saying that backwards because of the other way it's said. Is this still in effect today? That's the question. If not, when did it end? Did it end with Abraham?
No.
Is he talking to Abraham, in other words? No, because we know he didn't. That's not what he's not saying specifically Abraham. He's talking about Abraham and his descendants, because it's used again later of Israel by the prophet Balaam. So we know he's talking about his descendants. I don't think you can apply this to all of his descendants, say Ishmael. It's specifically Israel. Again, Balaam helps clarify that. So has it come to an end, or is it still in effect today? This is something that I have heard about for quite a while. I went and grabbed this book just as a Kindle so I could grab some pages out of it. If you've never read this, it's worth a look. It's called Eye to Eye. It's by a gentleman named William Koenig. He was a White House reporter for a number of years. I don't remember, 15, 20 years, something like that. And he starts quite a ways back and starts giving examples, and I don't remember the number of examples. It seems like it was in the 80s or 90s, different times. I'm not giving you that. I'll give you one just verbally, and then I'll show you just one example of how this lays out in the book. George H.W. Bush was pressing on Israel to do a two-state solution, and they were meeting in, if I remember right, it was Madrid. And during the meetings where they're making this pressure on Israel to give up land for a Palestinian state, you remember the movie The Perfect Storm, right? These two huge storms kind of come together and make this perfect storm, and the waves are 100 feet high, and it's crazy. That almost completely destroyed Kenny Bunkport, President H.W. Bush's house. Like has to stop doing some speaking engagements to go check on the house because it had been almost wiped out by that storm, which was happening while they were having a meeting in Madrid about forcing Israel to give up land. Coincidence, I'm sure, So let's look at this one. I don't have a page number on these because this is the Kindle version and they'd be different in print. This is George W. Bush, so now we're up in 2005. This is July 6th through 8th. There's a meeting of the G8 heads of state from UK, Russia, the EU, France, Germany, Brazil, Italy, Russia, and Canada. They met in Scotland with Prime Minister Tony Blair leading as the president, they decided to give $3 billion to the Palestinian Authority. So that's what happens at the meeting. Other side, the 4th through the 10th, Hurricane Dennis hit Cuba first, then the southern coast of the United States, beginning in Florida, and traveled up to Illinois, doing about between $1 and $2 billion of damage. The London terrorist attack happened on the 7th of July. So they're meeting from the 6th to the 8th, and in the middle of that meeting, there's these terrorist bombings. 4 on the same day that the G8 planned to announce $3 billion gift to the Palestinians. That's not cursing Israel, but that's not honoring Israel. They're dishonoring Israel, and they have these bombings. Again, coincidental, right? Now let's move to August 15th on the far side over there. 63,000 Israeli soldiers and police delivered eviction notices to Israeli settlers living in Gaza and northern Samaria. Right below that, with tears and multiple protests, 9,000 Israeli settlers completely evacuated 25 communities. Most left voluntarily, but many were forcibly removed by Israeli troops. 3,000 homes were destroyed. So this is Israel leaving Gaza, again under pressure from the United States. That's August 15th, and you have the 15th to the 23rd. August 17th, Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon authorized mandatory evacuation of residents refusing to leave Gaza. And on the 19th, U.S. Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice has said evacuations cannot be Gaza only. We're not going to settle for just kicking you out of Gaza. You've got more to do yet. On the 19th, in Gaza, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State David Welch said Gaza pullout would re-energize the roadmap to the peace plan, which is the dividing Israel into 2 states. Catastrophe this side. August 23rd through the 29th, Hurricane Katrina. Now look at your dates there. The 23rd, August 15th to the 23rd is when the evacuations were happening. And on the last day, the 23rd, that's when Hurricane Katrina hits. Largest disaster in U.S. history. Between 112 and $200 billion. Now, again, am I making the claim that these are absolutely, this is what's happening? No, but the more of those you find, the more you become convinced that I think that might still be in effect. Those that bless Israel will be blessed. Those that curse Israel will be cursed. When did we rise to superpower status? I would argue World War II and after, right? When did we recognize Israel? 1948. The Secretary of State resigned when the president agreed to do that. They were so opposed inside the American government with doing that, but the president at the time did it anyway. So my point is, I don't know, I can't tell you absolutely, but it does seem like, let me read this for you. This is the one I added late. The Lord said to Abraham after Lot had separated from him, and we'll look at this next week, lift up your eyes and look from the place where you are. He's in Israel, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. For all the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. Not for a time, not for a season, but forever. So as nations come against Israel and try to take their land, which God has given them forever, those nations have calamity. And you can actually follow this back through history. There's a lot of that. This book does a good job of laying a lot of that out. So here's my answer to that question. I see no end to this promise. We side against Israel at our own peril. Caveat, this does not mean everything Israel does is right. That doesn't mean I have to carte blanche them and say, oh, yep, that's good. No. they're a flawed people running governments. Of course they can screw up. They can do bad stuff. But when we start saying you have to give up this land that God had promised you, I think we get in real danger. And we're getting very close to doing some of that currently. And so what will be the next layer of destruction that we might see happen? I don't know. All right. I will bless those. Oh, go ahead.
I was just,
Oh, sorry. Here and then there.
experientially, sometimes I realize that I live in a Black Hawk bubble.
Yeah.
Because these are where my friends are, my
Right.
activities are.
Yep.
So I live in that kind of bubble as old as I am.
Mhm.
All the time I've spent in Egypt, I have discovered that you don't even say the word Israel in Egypt.
Mhm.
And these are wonderful Christian people that I'm hanging out with.
Yeah.
In Istanbul, you better not say it.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean? You use another phrase to describe
Yeah.
them, because they don't believe that
This is in
this
play.
is that the country is what this is all about.
I understand. We'll get into it more next week, but I will say this. There's a reason why, it was Brenda and I don't remember exactly how the conversation came up. We were talking yesterday and this issue came up. And I made the comment that there will be people that will argue what you're saying. And she's like, how in the world, right? How would that? I mean, this seems so obvious that, of course, Israel is still something that is God's people. Now, does that mean they're saved? No. He's working with the church right now. And now Jews and Gentiles alike become Christians, right? But that doesn't mean that he has done with Israel. So here's the reason why we see that more obviously and others do not see that. And it comes back to the thing we've talked about so many times, being a pre-trib, premillennial viewpoint of Scripture. We see the Scripture laid out in a specific order where the next event to happen would be the rapture. And then what? Well, then God goes back and starts working directly with Israel again for 7 years, called the time of Jacob's trouble, or the 70th week of Daniel. And then there's the end of the tribulation where Jesus comes back and sets up a millennial reign here on earth, and he reigns on the earth. We see it that way. We've studied that numerous times. That's not a common view, is the point. If you look at all major denominations, whether it be Lutheran or Methodist or Catholic, all of them hold to amillennial. Like, we're in the millennium right now. There is no tribulation coming. The next event is the second coming of Jesus. God's done with the Jews. We're now the nation of Israel. All the promises to Israel now belong to the church. So this whole claim on land thing is just bunk. I've got a guy I watch on YouTube that I kind of like him. He's just an interesting guy, and he's of that mindset. And when this whole thing happened, he was interviewing someone, and he said, well, don't worry about me siding with Israel. I'm a blah, 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 I'm an amillennialist. So I'm not accusing them. That's what they're saying. That's their view of it. So my point is, we see that very obviously, but it's because of our starting point. And I think our starting point, we have it because we've studied the Bible and we've come to the conclusion of what the Bible presents. I think you come to amillennialism because you are taught amillennialism. You understand the difference? Like, it's a theory, and you craft that, and then you teach that to somebody, and then they go to the Bible and say, yeah, I see how that could work. Like, you don't come up with evolution by reading Genesis 1, 2, and 3, right? You'd never just, you know what? I bet those days were 1 billion years. You know, that you would never think that way. When it says that Jesus comes back and rules on the earth for 1,000 years, no one goes, you know what? I bet that means that the millennium is an undeterminate period of time that we're currently living in. What? You know what I'm saying? You have to bring that to the text, is what I'm simply saying. So because we've done the study we've done, we get to something like this, which is very relevant today. It influences how you read the newspaper right now. So, Gary, go ahead.
Well, President Trump moved the embassy,
Mhm.
which people
Tons of
thought
backlash,
World
yeah.
War III was gonna start. He
Sure.
did that. The Abraham Accords.
Yep.
There are people that said he's the greatest friend to Israel. People
Mhm.
in Israelis have said that.
Yep.
It just struck me that maybe in now what's going on now, what our government could have something to do with why he's so hated. There are a lot of political things that, yeah, he's gonna change things, but if you bring Israel into it,
I think that's probably low on their list of reasons to hate him. But I want to say this, and I really try not to do politics, but I'm also not afraid to talk about it when it's relevant to this. I forgot to go look at this. I will see if I can find it for next week when we come back to 13. The Roadmap for Peace, was that his plan's name? And then the Abraham Accords came out of that. I think they called that Roadmap to
Well, that
Peace.
was Bush, wasn't
Was it Bush? But
That had-
whichever one, the Abraham Accords, when he released that, there was people I'm aware of, they kept sending him letters, trying to talk to him, don't do this, 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 because they had read Bill Koenig's book. And in that, he's offering up East Jerusalem or Old Jerusalem or something to the Palestinians, da 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 da. Now the defense of him that people will make is, well, he knew they weren't going to accept it. So it's sort of like a false offer. Well, doesn't matter. Here's the coincidence. COVID hit just as he released his Roadmap for Peace. Like, you can go back and do some checking on that. The timing is like within days. He releases his roadmap or his Abraham Accord thing, which is some good stuff, but it's also got some things in there that divide the land in ways that within a day or two, COVID hits. It's like, it's his Katrina type thing. Do you know what I mean? So again, notice who I've talked about. I've talked about HW, W. I haven't brought up Bill Clinton, and I haven't brought up, I'm not doing politics. What I'm saying is, I don't care who you are. You can be the greatest friend of Israel, but when you start messing with the land, look out. You're not cursing them. You're just dishonoring something God has promised them. So, I forgot to go to you. Maybe. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying to get the chrono.
Yes,
of the
sorry.
years. What year did the Israelites had to leave Gaza?
Oh, back to that. Let's see. It was 2005, I believe. Yeah, 2005.
And what about the West Bank?
I don't remember. The book covers a lot of it. I mean, is it 80 different instances that it lists, I think? It's pretty crazy. All right, let's keep moving, or oh my goodness, look at the time. All right. I will bless those that bless you, and those that dishonor you, I will curse. And in you, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So, Abraham, go. Sorry.
He never does.
So the highest ranking Jew in politics, Chuck Schumer, is proposing that there's a two-state solution. How do we handle it?
I'm going to deal with it next week.
Okay.
Dodge. That's like I don't know. All right. So Abraham went as the Lord had told him, and Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. And Abraham took Sarah his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions, and all they had gathered, and the people that they had acquired in Haran. Again, see, this is not 4 or 5 people. This is a huge crowd. And they set out to go to the land of Canaan. So they are, I'm going to zoom in now, okay? So this is the big map, and we're zooming in on just Canaan. Up at the top is Haran. He's coming down here. When they came to the land of Canaan, Abraham passed through the land to a place called Shechem, to the oak of Mamre, or however you say that. At that time, the Canaanites were in the land. Okay, so there is Shechem. If you kind of take the big picture and zoom in, Shechem, little red dot there. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, to your offspring I will give this land. So again, he's on the path that God has laid out for him. So you can say blessing follows obedience. You could make that claim, right? But it's not like if you're really good, then God gives you goodies. It's not that. So don't, but there is a blessing for being obedient. So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. Interesting. He actually appeared to him. We didn't ever see it state that God appeared to Noah or that he appeared to Adam. He walked with them. We don't know exactly what that means. But this one, it specifically says God appeared to Abram. And I'll make the case for this later. I think those are Christophanies where Jesus shows up in the Old Testament. I think we can make the case for that. And a lot of them, it just says appeared, but it wouldn't make sense for him to appear in different forms. So I'm thinking it's the same form in all the instances of appearance. And some of them are pretty clear that it's pre-incarnate Jesus, I think. From there, he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. So now he's gone from Shechem, which is up in here, down to here. That's where he's at now. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. Again, he never really owns anything other than this one plot of land where he buries his wife. But he builds altars quite frequently. We'll find that as we move our way through this. And Abram journeyed on, still going toward the Negev. Now this is kind of interesting. He's made it to the land of Canaan, slows down long enough to build an altar, and keeps right on going. It's like, wait a minute, you're here, stop. What are you doing, right? Well, we find out there's a famine in the land, and there's no food, and so that's what moves him further. But it's just interesting that it's like he's finally made it, and then he just like blows right on past it, you know. Like I was driving back from Florida, pulled into Fort Wayne and kept right on going and ended up in Michigan or so. What are you doing? Come on, you made it, stop, you know. But anyway, there's a couple quick things as we wrap this up. This is from James chapter 2. Speaking of Abraham believed God and it was counted to him as righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. It's the only person we see listed in the Bible specifically with that kind of a title. Now Jesus tells his disciples in the upper room, you're no longer my servants, you're my friends. Okay, so it's not that he's the only friend of God, but he's the only one that's identified that way. This is back in Isaiah. But you, Israel, my servant, so God speaking, Jacob, another way of saying Israel, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, comma, my friend. God speaking, Abraham, my friend. Just like Jesus talking to the Father and says, your name, my friend, you know, that'd be good. That ranks up there with well done, good and faithful servant, right? You are my servant. I have chosen you and not cast you off. Fear not, I am with you. Be not dismayed, I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Famous passage out of Isaiah. I think it's good. There are times I think we take these things out of context. This is specifically to Israel, but I think it is very applicable to us. All right. So, application. Has the Lord called you to do something and you have stopped in Haran? Have you stopped halfway through doing what you're supposed to be doing? Just a kind of a challenge to us. What is your next step of obedience? What's interesting, and you see that with Abraham, go to the land I will show you. He doesn't tell him where he's going, and that is so much the way I've experienced Christian life. I don't get the next 12 steps. I usually get one, which doesn't make sense. And so I have to do that one, and then I will see the next one. And I've shared with you guys a while back the idea of potentially buying land, and I started down a path and got to the end of the path, and it was very clear that I shouldn't. I'm like, what'd you lead me down a dead-end trail for? Because there was a lesson to be learned down at the end. It wasn't dead end, it was a lesson to be learned type thing of trusting the Lord. So don't think that every time you're following the Lord's guidance, it's always going to work out well. It may not, but there's lessons to be learned either way. And then what's your main takeaway this morning, which I usually ask you, so I'll end on this. Fear not the things of the world. Be a doer of the word. When you know where you're supposed to do something, do that. Be obedient to God. That, I think, is at least my main takeaway. Don't get stuck halfway in the middle. Keep moving forward. So, all right. Any last comments, and then I'll pray for us. Go ahead.
The verses that you mentioned earlier about Balaam,
Mhm.
could you tell me about that, please?
After class, I'll look them up. I can't remember. I looked them up, but I didn't grab them.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it. If you look up the "Those who bless you, I'll bless you; those who curse you, I'll curse." That's the quote. I mean, you could type something like that in Google, and I'm sure it would pop it up. But I'll see if I can find it. Go ahead.
First, thank you, Chris, for your teaching this morning. How many people are planning on inviting anybody for Christmas?
Boy.
Easter.
Anybody, I should see 28 hands going up. Anyone?
I didn't hear the for Easter Sunday. You mean?
Well,
For Resurrection Sunday, who's bringing a guest, or
we've
who's?
invited people, we just haven't heard from them.
Okay.
There's a card.
I thought I
that
would
you
see
can-
28 hands going up. I'll pray for you this week.
What they're doing is they're passing out bundles of 10. He has some if you'd like.
Invitations. Grab one when you go out.
Let me pray.
And we've got food
Yes,
out here.
and then we'll talk more
She said
because
she
it makes
wants
it
to see
tough.
Dawn when she comes back up.
Tough editing for I'm always trying to be cautious for the sake of Gary's editing job. We edit all this stuff out that's not supposed to be in there. That's okay. It's okay. All right, let me pray, and then you can go if you need to. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the morning. Thank you for the blessing of your word. Again, it's endless, all the treasures that we can mine from it. Something like the story of Abraham in chapter 12 of Genesis, we see relevance for how we look at the news today that we're currently living in. Kind of amazing. Help us to be bold in our proclamation of your love to others. Help us to be steadfast, not wavering in our convictions. Help us to love you and love others well. And in this room, you say to love everyone, but especially the brethren. So, Lord, help us do a good job of loving each other well in here, being a family inside a family here at Blackhawk. And Lord, just pray that we'd come back together in the weeks to come to continue to unpack the life of Abraham and learn from him. I just pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.